Hey everyone, welcome back to Yuri's Box. In this video, I'm going to look at TLT, the week ahead, waiting for the PMIs. If you like this kind of content, consider leaving a like. And as usual, nothing in this video is financial advice. So, as I pointed in my previous video when I looked at the weekly close for TLT, I mentioned how this week we will have the PMIs on Monday, another round of an initial jobless claims on Thursday, and PCE coming out on Friday. Now, as I've made quite clear in my previous videos, for where we are in the cycle, and now again that it still needs to be confirmed really, but in any case, as far as my opinion is concerned, given where we are in the cycle, inflation needs to take the back seat when it comes down, between who gets the priority, growth or inflation. And the reasoning behind that is something like the quits rate, for example. We are at cycle lows. We no longer have labor market participants telling us that we're in a state of a red hot economy, that where we have a state of abundance, and so that can drive up wage growth, and that can drive up consumption, and that can drive up inflation. So you no longer have that positive feedback loop potentially. This can change, but as long as the numbers are what they are, and again, we will get another round of data in the JOLTS report early next month. But in any case, what the quits rate is signaling potentially is that we no longer are in a state of abundance. Now, it is still to be seen if we are in a dire situation or we're still in an okay shape. My general feeling about things is that we're in a place that is, what the quits rate is indicating, basically a slowdown. That doesn't mean we're in a depression, and it doesn't mean we're in a boom. We're somewhere in between, but the trend is clearly going towards, it's downward sloping, okay? When you look at inflation, I pointed out many times how from the fall to really January, February, March, that time frame, you usually get a bump, and again, looking at what happened last year, we saw exactly that. Now, the reason for this, as I explained many times, is that around this time is, well, the holidays. And the holidays is a time where people feel more upbeat about things. You have people traveling more. You have people getting their end of year bonuses. You have people spending more because of, again, Christmas gifts and, so on and so forth. So by itself, you do tend to see inflation, get sticky, if that's the kind of word you want to use. But after you get out of that time frame, you resume the previous trend. And that has basically been my expectation, given the fact that this year we also had some momentary events take place, such as port strikes getting the possibility of port strikes in September, natural disasters, and again the tariff saber rattling that has pulled forward a lot of the demand in order to try and front run the tariffs. Okay. Looking back at history, however, if you were to take, inflation as, say, inflation is the priority, I generally believe that you run the risk of being terribly wrong, simply because if you look at what was inflation doing just prior to, let's just look, and I've pointed out the three previous recessions we had in 2008, in 2000 and 1990. Now, granted, every cycle is different, and there will be different things driving inflation for each cycle, this one included. However, just looking at the raw numbers, if you look at 2008, if you were to take the point of view that inflation is the biggest problem, inflation in 2008, in July of 2008, this was after Bear Stearns. Bear Stearns happened in March of 2008, and Lehman Brothers happened 2 months after, in September. inflation was hovering at around the 5% mark. If you look back at the 2000 recession, inflation was sticky, to use a familiar word, at around the 3.5% mark. In the 1990s, just before the recession of the 1990, you saw inflation peak at 6.3%. So really, inflation really depends on the trajectory of the economy. If the economy is on the upswing, like we saw in 2022, then absolutely inflation should take the should be priority. If, however, you have a slowing economy, I think that inflation takes the backseat, and you have to pay attention to, again, the growth outlook. And so, insofar as the data coming out next week is concerned, we'll be looking closely at the PMI report, coming out tomorrow. And the simple reason for that is that the PMIs really set the tone for what will be the non-farm payroll report the week after. Last month, when the PMI report for last month was released, I said basically that my expectations were for a miss on non-farm payrolls. I pointed something like 105K, if I'm not mistaken. Now, again, wasn't necessarily close, but directionally at least, it helps you to paint a better picture and, to generally try and guess what to expect. And the reason for that is that, again, you just read the commentary. And what we got last month was basically negativity. All of the optimism seemed to have faded away, as you see in the future sentiment part of the report right here. If you look at the employment, you also see negativity on that side. And also, highlighted in yellow, is basically, what I've been arguing for in my videos. I think this is a very important part of the report, which says, while overall inflationary pressures remain muted, this reflected in a squeezing of margins. Okay, now that is why I'd say that inflation kind of takes the backseat, because if you see a slowing economy and inflation going up, what that will likely have is a deflationary effect, as ridiculous that can sound, I know. The reason for that, in my opinion, is that if companies can't pass on those costs to the consumer because the consumer no longer has the tools to drive wages up, the only actors left to eat the increased prices, be it from inflation, from tariffs, or whatever, are the companies themselves. Okay, and the way companies are going to react to that is potentially with layoffs. So again, it really depends on what is growth, what is the growth outlook. And so that is why next week will be the week of the PMIs, in my opinion. Granted, PCE will likely come in hotter. I wouldn't even be surprised if we get something hotter than 0.3%. I wouldn't be surprised by a 0.4 print. But having said that, again, in my opinion, look at the PMIs, because they will really help set the tone and really help you give you better tools, and to really just try and imagine what the non-farm payroll print will look like. If you continue to see negativity, if you continue to see employment suffer, if you continue to see the outlook for the future wane, there is a chance that the non-farm payroll prints will possibly miss. Okay, now you don't have to be on exactly precise on the exact number. Nobody knows the exact number, but at least directionally, you know what to expect. The other side of the non-farm payroll report that will come out in 2 weeks is the initial jobless claims, and we'll get another read next Thursday. Now, as I've said in my previous videos, my kind of line in the sand is the 215 to 220 mark. Whenever we see initial jobless claims dip below the 215 mark, you can generally expect the unemployment rate to drift lower. Whenever you see initial jobless claims come up above the 220 mark, you can generally expect the unemployment rate to go up in the next report. We're still missing two prints on the initial jobless claims, and again, the next forecast is for 225. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if we get somewhere close to 225, maybe plus or minus again 2 or 3K, something like that. But again, as next week is concerned, pay close attention to the PMI report. If we get something that confirms what we saw in February, then TLT will definitely get a boost. And if you see weakness and a miss on the PMIs, expect TLT to get a boost. And I would imagine that boost possibly persisting throughout the week, even possibly perhaps in the face of a hotter PCE report, simply because the PCE report really has been priced in, and it really got priced in on when the PPI got on the PPI report. And it was really kind of the opposite of what we had in February right here, which was actually when I made my first video. In February, we had hotter inflation numbers overall, but some of the components that make up PPI were somewhat cooler, leading the bond market to extrapolate a possible cooler read on PCE. So therefore, we had bonds generally drift higher, even in the face of hotter inflation numbers. This month we had the exact opposite. We had cooler inflation numbers, but because of some of the components that feed into PCE were somewhat hotter, the bond market extrapolated a hotter PCE read. So unless it's really, really bad, something like 0.5, if you do get a miss on the PMIs, then I would expect that move to stick on TLT. Because again, it would also feed into lower expectations on the non-farm payroll print, which would again just feed into negativity. If, on the other hand, you see PMIs coming in positive, I wouldn't expect TLT to do much, honestly, and possibly even move towards losing the bull market support band, okay? Simply because what TLT has going for it right now is really the outlook and the possibility of slower US growth. Whatever data point comes out that confirms this thesis is just a tailwind for TLT. If you see good news, as usual, don't expect much out of TLT. So that is basically the reason why, really, if you have to pay attention to one thing and one thing only next week out of PCE, some of the GDP data, initial jobless claims, yeah. But really, top priority goes to the PMIs, because they will help you get a better understanding of what the current economic outlook is, and also what we could get in the beginning of April when it comes down to the non-farm payroll print. Okay, so I'll keep you updated. I'll definitely be watching the numbers get released tomorrow afternoon. And I'll see you next time. If you like this kind of content, consider leaving a like, and I'll see you next time. Bye.